I'm ready. I'm ready. 3, 2, 1, boom.
A kid's electronic toy maker, VTech, admitting tonight it's been targeted by hackers.
This latest hack
Oh my God!
5 million people worldwide have had their data stolen.
Why would this hacker want, hundreds or thousands of photos of children or whatever else that they're collecting?
Never mind. I should probably not say that on stream, huh?
Well, let's find out today. So to understand this story, we need to take it back a year. So it's Christmas morning, and you just bought both your kids the brand new VTech InnoTab 3 learning tablet. And man, your kids are stoked. So behind the screams of joy, deep down they're gonna be safe on the web. But more importantly, they're gonna learn. Now, maybe you're not super tech savvy being a boomer and all, but at least with VTech, you can send your kids videos.
The minion Facebook
Those photos, pictures, all from your smartphone. But don't worry, it's all age appropriate.
With VTech Kid Connect, you get the comfort of hearing each other's voice.
I love you, Mom.
Anywhere, anytime.
And for you, this tablet is just another device to add to your Wi-Fi network, like your smartwatch, your smart mug. And VTech tells you that all of your data is going to be safe. But connecting everything we own to the internet opens up an...
I wouldn't trust a toy company to have safe security. I'm gonna be real. Like, do you really trust them? They make toys, man. Like, come on.
New can of worms for us, because this toy isn't designed for security, it's designed to have fun. And what VTech failed to tell you was how much illegal data they would collect on your child, and even worse, how unsecure it all was.
Love that.
Now, hacker can kind of be a cringe word, honestly. We often think of black hoodies, green text, Adderall,
Anonymous!
That's more of a Hollywood trope. You see, real hackers are interested in making a system do what it was never intended for. Hackers look for exploits. And when a group of hackers found this new VTech tablet, they did what they do best. Online forums sprung up dedicated to just hacking the InnoTab 3. One guy figured out how to run Doom on it, of course he did. Another guy popped it open and was able to get root access in the Linux operating system. And pretty soon, this children's tablet had its own little thriving hacking community all online. Now, Slipstream was a 21-year-old security researcher working for Malwarebytes, which is pretty impressive, honestly. And he knew a bit more than your average Joe when it came to finding exploits. So when he stumbled upon this VTech hacking forum, he became fascinated with the community. So he picked one up at his local store. So after a few weeks of messing around with it, he discovered the tablet talked to a website pretty often, planetvtech.com. Now, there's really nothing out of the ordinary with that, but when he checked the site, he kind of noticed a pretty big problem. Planet VTech.
It's not secure at all because it's made for children, and why the hell would you, why the hell would you hack a kid's website and then boom!
Was using Adobe Flash for its login form. Let me put this in perspective. Flash has been banished from the internet in 2020 because it is riddled with exploits and vulnerable to SQL injections. Now, for those that don't know, SQL injections are like one of the biggest security threats for a website online. But what is it? Now, let's say you fill out an online form, and instead of typing in your name like a good boy, you're a bad boy this time, and you put a piece of malicious code, a SQL injection. Now, once you hit enter, the site will take that piece of code as a command for the database.
Oh no.
Rather than just a piece of data. And this allows the hacker to steal, modify, or add data to the entire database of that site. So we're talking emails, credit cards, phone numbers, passwords. Now today there's lots of tools to protect yourself against these attacks, but at its most basic level,
well, getting rid of Adobe Flash also helped a lot.
Perform a SQL injection, the website must have a vulnerable input page. And in that case, Adobe Flash is honestly probably the worst thing you could possibly have.
It's funny because when I was a little kid, I remember learning how to like make a page using Adobe Flash, and I was like, this is so easy! Little did I know we would never use it again.
So seeing how vulnerable the site was to SQL injection, Slipstream looked through his own scripts that he had to execute SQL injections. And he could try one on the site, though if he was, he'd be committing a federal crime, and he would probably risk his pretty good job that he had. But he thought he probably shouldn't even try, because VTech has to have their security on point, right? Nope. As a 21-year-old kid with his brain not even fully developed, he loads it up and hits enter on the script. Bam!
Holy f***, I have root. That was easy. What can I find? AKA
Slipstream, a 21-year-old kid, had complete access to VTech's network. And he couldn't believe it, a $2 billion company with an open door to their backend. Now,
I totally believe it. I like to make the metaphor for if you are good at making something, if you delve into something that's completely unrelated, that's where things can go really, really wrong. In my opinion, honestly. Pisces, thank you! Like, for example, my best allegory for this is that what is it called? Corsair makes good keyboards, but they don't make good headsets. What is it called? Logitech makes good mice, but it doesn't mean they make good headsets either. I don't think there's like an overlap in products, but it doesn't mean that it's a one-to-one. It doesn't mean that it's the company's bad. They're just not good at making one thing. They're good at making one thing, but it doesn't overlap into the other thing. Like expertise, like also like going from cybersecurity from making toys for kids, like it's a little bit of a fucking leap. Let's be real.
At this point, Slipstream should have just left the network and alerted VTech of the security gap, and then hopefully they would have forgiven him for hacking in, but that's not, he didn't do that. Now let's remember, 21-year-old half-developed brain. So he's in the network and he starts snooping around, and he finds several databases, and they're all big. I mean, we're talking gigabytes of data, which seems
me when my mom asks why there's 10 gigabytes of Shrek.
pretty important. Now, he didn't have time to actually look inside and see what there were, so we thought steal now, and he'll check it later. So he clones everything he can find, and then quickly disconnects from planetvtech.com. Now, once the adrenaline wore off, Slipstream had just realized he had committed a federal crime, and a pretty big one at that, stealing the data of over 4,833,678 accounts. Holy.
That's a lot, too. Like, I thought maybe 100,000?
Hell, on the dark web, your data goes for $65 a pop, so times that, that's $314 million.
Holy.
Even if he was to make 100th of that. That's a pretty nice payday. But Slipstream wasn't in it for the money. It was just his curiosity. And when that curiosity led him to take a closer look at the stolen trove of data, a pit grew in his stomach. Because this wasn't your average data breach. It was the data of children. We're talking full names, email addresses, questions, home addresses, who their parents are, what's their address, everything. Essentially, anyone with access to this database could say, here is 7-year-old Tom Beck with his dad, Mark Beck. They live at 123 Oakview Lane. His password is 456. Their security question is, what's your dog's first name? Answer, Rex. Mark Beck at Hot.
And people also reuse their passwords and their answers for these questions all the fucking time. It's so bad.
Mail.com. Pretty But the scariest part of all of this was the thousands of messages and videos and pictures of children who had used the tablet. It was essentially the data for anyone who had ever registered with VTech, which is a $2 billion company. Now, Slipstream just couldn't believe it, that he had just taken the identities of children. So he had 3 choices at this point. Number 1, sell the data. Number 2, tell VTech about the security gap and maybe they'll fix it. Or number 3, tell the media about VTech's security gap and then they'll have to fix it. Now, weeks later, Lorenzo, a reporter at Motherboard, receives an encrypted message from an unknown number. It was a hacker who wanted to remain anonymous and hand over the database of 4.8 million accounts.
This guy's for real!
VTech. Now, this hacker had made it clear that he had never sold or was going to sell this data. He said, quote, I just want these issues made aware and fixed, he said. But
he could have ruined so many people's lives and he decided not to. That's impressive. Like, he's a white hat hacker for sure.
Most important of all, the hacker wanted him to break this story. Now, for Lorenzo, the hardest part wasn't writing the article about this. He needed to verify that this even happened, because any story about a data breach could just tank a company stock and lose them millions of dollars. So yeah, you better make damn sure that you do your due diligence on this. Now, for Lorenzo to verify this, one person came to mind, Troy Hunt. Now, he's known as the data breach expert, the creator of HaveIBeenPwned.com. It's where you can check to see if your personal data's been compromised. So
I've used that before.
So Lorenzo sends him all of the VTech files, and the minute Troy opens them up, he's astounded by how bad the whole thing is. The identities of 200,000 children who were on average 7 years old. 4.8 million customer email addresses with their corresponding unencrypted passwords. Now, the passwords weren't stored in plain text, but what's called hashed with MD5. Now, MD5 is a cryptography algorithm that's been broken for about 20 years, meaning that all of these passwords could be cracked easily within minutes. But then that didn't even matter, because the secret questions and answers for the whole password recovery were stored in plain text, meaning anyone could just reset the password and use that information for other accounts tied to that email. Now this was bad, but he needed to make sure how was this data even real, because there is a thing as fabricated data breaches. Now Troy's website, Have I Been Pwned, allows users to notify them when their email's in a data breach. Now this is like a massive repository of every data breach that has ever happened. So he cross-examined the VTech database, the Have I Been Pwned database, and he finds 18 emails that have been in both. So he reaches out, and it's a pretty big stretch, and he emails them asking for some help, if they'd be willing to verify some non-sensitive data. You know, where they live at, and if they had a VTech account. And all he could do now was just wait. But thank God, because within 24 hours, 6 people respond back.
Yes, that's my data. No doubt about it.
So it looked like all the signs were pointing to this data being real.
And again, he could have just done like the worst thing imaginable, but he's working with them. That's GigaChad behavior for sure.
But it even gets worse, because even though there were tens of thousands of children's photos and video files, they were all encrypted, that same database they were in had the decryption keys for all of it, meaning it didn't even matter. VTech had up so bad. So with Lorenzo having the full confidence that this breach, the whole thing happened, now we had the mission of trying to tell VTech about this incident. And I say mission because you think for a $2 billion company, that'd be a little bit easy. Nope, emails referring him to this guy, telling him to call here, telling him to leave a voicemail over here, back and forth, and then finally, after a couple of days, he finally got a hold of someone.
A couple of days trying to get a hold of people, telling them to get hacked? Oh my god.
And they said,
this is why I hate corpos, man. I hate corpos. You want to help them, and they're like, yeah, you have to call this guy, and then you have to get to this department, and then, diarrhea.
On November 14th, an unauthorized party accessed their VTech customer data on our Learning Lodge App Store customer database, and we were not aware of this unauthorized access until you alerted us. Wow, that's how bad it was. They didn't even know that it even happened. So just days later, November 27th, VTech then sends out this super watered down press release telling everyone about the hack, but they never mentioned how many accounts were compromised, that nothing was even encrypted, or that even their kids' data was involved. But thank God, because the next day Motherboard releases their article about the breach and reveals what actually happened. And man, people were pissed.
The hackers took names, personal details, pictures children had uploaded, and chat messages between them and their parents. The only good news is the hacker doesn't seem to want to publish any of it.
Photos in the chat
what
logs,
a good
which is
guy,
really unsettling,
man.
unsettling information.
What's the one thing that parents should know about this hack?
Probably everything they have given VTech has been compromised.
Front page news around the world. Everyone was running the story. They were just dumbfounded that a children's toy company could make such a stupid mistake when it came to...
Again, I'm really not surprised. They're a children's toy company. They're not involved in tech in any way.
The data of their kids.
Not surprised
at all. VTech had to make a tough choice because they were going to shut down all of their App Store platforms for all of their toys for 2 months to fix the servers. Imagine if you bought a toy that did not work for 2 months. You'd be pissed.
That's
but it
bad.
even gets worse. This part's insane. So the day after they stated they got hacked, they said the hack was actually way worse than anyone ever said. That those 200,000 accounts of kids, it was actually 6 million children that were hacked. Wild.
Whoa.
So for those 2 months while
That's
VTech servers were down and they're getting the much needed security upgrades, they have another surprise.
Was that a fucking cock and...
2 months while VTech servers were down and they're getting the much needed security.
Did he really have to include that part, man? The cage? The cock cage?
Security upgrades, they have another surprise in store for all of the parents. They update their website terms of service. God, this is so bad. You acknowledge and agree that any information you send or receive during your use of this site may not be secure and may be intercepted or later acquired by unauthorized parties. Dude. In other words, if VTech ever gets hacked again, it's the customers have no ground for complaining because they already said it wasn't secure. Like, how is that? So then at that point, the government started to ask questions because you can't be saying stuff like this about their security. Senators would write public letters asking if they sold the data to anyone or did they collect data on kids that were under 12. Okay, real quick. So while I'm editing this video, I found something wild I had to share. So Senator Joe Barton, who wrote this letter to VTech, strangely enough, had his own data leaked on the internet a year later. And by data, I mean private photos.
Bro, you can tell from the blurring that this is like a bottom up shot of his like wiener, bro. There's not enough blur for that picture. Dude, he's looking down at you. Who is he sending this to? Maybe it was his mistress, Chad.
And text messages. God, he's a big...
I want you so bad right now. Deep and hard. Yo, Joe B. Holy shit, this guy's a fucking dog.
boy. Let's just say Joe Barton isn't a senator anymore.
Yeah, no shit.
Because VTech didn't just violate their customers,
so
they violated
funny.
COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy
That's not an
Protection
email,
Rule.
that's
And
a
the government
text, I'm
said
pretty
that,
sure.
number one, they failed to encrypt the
It
data of
wasn't an
6
email.
million children. And then number two, they never told the parents that their children's data would even be collected, which is insane to think about today. For a company as big as VTech, $2 billion, the FTC would settle with them for $650,000. Or to put
This reminds me of when Nexon, the people that made MapleStory, they made like $6 billion off of like faking gotcha like probability. And they only got fined like what, $250,000? Like they're worth $6 billion and they made like $1 to $2 billion off of that scam from MapleStory. Basically, the long story short is that they faked the drop rates. And then they told them, oh yeah, you can get it. And then they faked it and changed the numbers and you can't actually get the item. And then it was like $250,000. I think it was $2 million. Yeah, well, like the point is they still made like $2 billion and they only got fined $2 million. Like it was ridiculous the rate that they were fined for. It's like when you're really, really rich and the speeding ticket is like $60, but you make like $100,000 a year, so you don't give a fuck and you just keep doing it. That's the same principle. I think that what Sweden does is really smart. They check how much you make in a year, and then they'll eventually take away your license. Bro, it doesn't matter. Like, you could get into a car accident and kill someone before that. That's not the point. You also get like a bunch of strikes, but the point is, in Sweden or Norway, I forget which Scandinavian country, you get fined. If you're poor, you don't get fined like $100. You get fined X amount, right? But if you make a lot of money, you get fined the equivalent of your salary a year. Oh, it's Finland? Yeah. It was Finland. I forget which one, but like I think that's way better. Way better.
a little differently, 10 cents a child. That's what your child's data is worth to the government. But the best part is VTech didn't have to admit or deny any wrongdoing. Just a real slap on the wrist. So what's VTech up to these days? Well, they're killing it. They just came out with their Kitty Buzz 3 phone, baby monitors, webcams for kids. They're doing just fine. Would I buy anything from them? Probably not. Now, Slipstream had laid low after he talked to Lorenzo, and kinda no one really heard from him. And then just 29 days after this whole ordeal, the English police finally tracked down and arrested a 21-year-old man and seized all of his assets. His crime? Hacking into VTech. Now, the police at the time didn't even state his name or
stupid.
show a photo of him. But the
that's so stupid. Like, really, truly, that is stupid.
Story doesn't end here, because for that unknown hacker Slipstream, well, today we actually know his name. Zamus Clark. Now, 1 year after the hack, now at 22 years old, the English police stated he was given a formal adult caution. Now, don't worry, I had to look it up. I don't know what it was either. It's like a first-time offense where you admit guilt, but you're not prosecuted, and you're pretty much let off the hook. And honestly, he got pretty lucky, because even if VTech had no valid excuse for being vulnerable to SQL injection, like no one really does today, just a hacker accidentally causing damage to where they had to shut down all of their servers for 2 months and lose out on millions of dollars, they could have pinned that him. See, a good analogy for what he did is he brought a loaded gun into the TSA checkpoint and fired it off into the air. He didn't harm anyone, but he still committed a crime. Now, you would think that getting a slap on the wrist and a chance at life again would be some kind of deterrent from illegally hacking people. But no. So just 2 years later, Slipstream gained access into Microsoft's internal servers.
No, he did it again! Microsoft's not gonna fuck around with this guy.
He stole over 43,000 confidential files. We're talking confidential copies of pre-release Windows, betas of games that work. And then he uploaded a piece of malware onto the network, and then he was arrested a week later in June 2017.
You get off scot-free. Okay, like, I don't understand. Why would you... Like, this guy just lashed out at them. Microsoft is gonna beat your ass for that.
Now, Clark was bailed out immediately, but he was given no computer restrictions, and then guess what he did? He went to go hack into the Nintendo internal network, and he stole 2.5...
I can't tell if this guy is really, really stupid or just really, really lucky or both. I don't understand. Like, Microsoft gave you a little slap on the wrist, and then you go and fuck around with Nintendo? This guy has an ego or something, I don't know.
Terabytes from Nintendo. We're talking linked games, source codes. It is the biggest leak ever to happen from Nintendo.
Wow.
But the craziest thing is he was never incarcerated because he's autistic and they were concerned of that making him a target while he was in prison.
But that's not an excuse. He still knows what he did. He put malware into, like, the Microsoft database. I think I remember reading about that, unironically. I'm pretty sure. It really is a superpower? Yeah, I guess so. He's a winner.
So, in 2019, at 24 years old, Zamus Clark, Slipstream, would admit to hacking into Nintendo and Microsoft and stealing confidential information. So in the middle of editing this video, I kept coming across these North Korean PowerPoints about surveillance technology, but the craziest thing was Slipstream's name was credited in all of them, along with his Twitter handle. Now, I thought this didn't really make sense. I mean, Slipstream is from England, but...
Microsoft and Nintendo are assholes, though. That doesn't mean people should suffer. It's like going to BMW into the factory and planting some bombs in there, and then the people driving out of there and buying the cars get blown up. Like, did they deserve it? Yeah, no, probably not. They're just innocent people. It doesn't matter. He put in malware into the system to hurt people.
Like, what the hell would he know about North Korea? So I contacted one of the researchers on this PowerPoint, and they led me to an article from 2015. Now, a North Korean news agency interviewed Slipstream, and you may be wondering why. Because Slipstream hacked into North Korea in 2015. Now, he didn't just hack in. He went in and he stole the only version that we have ever seen of Red Star OS, which is like their operating system that they have. Now, let me put this in perspective on how absolutely insane this is. People had only seen screenshots of this operating system. No one had ever seen a copy until Slipstream hacked in and stole it and put it out there for everyone.
This guy's a genius of, like I can't. What? I managed to get a hold of the North Korean Linux distro.
For free to download. Absolutely insane. Now, if you're interested in seeing Red Star OS in action, I do recommend Mudahar's video.
Yeah, Mudahar saw it, yeah.
So let me just sum up Slipstream's career real quick.
That was so long ago. That was years ago. I remember reading about this.
He hacked in the VTech. He then hacked into Microsoft and stole 43,000 confidential files. He then hacked into Nintendo and caused the biggest data leak in Nintendo's history. And then he hacked into North Korea and stole their operating system, all before the age of 24. So Slipstream, if you're watching this, I'm not condoning what you did, but god damn, is that impressive. Now, times are really changing, and concerns for our data are no longer confined to just what we deliberately share with companies. All of these devices store and transmit huge quantities of data, location, habits, patterns, fingerprints, walking speed. And the scariest thing about all of this is that biometric data carries a new level of risk. Unlike passwords, you can't just change your fingerprint once you've been compromised. Now, companies state that our data is the most valuable asset for them. But when there's a data breach nearly every week due to horrendous security, it's like they don't even care. Because if they really did care, they would do everything they could to protect it.
Remember, chat, corporals don't love you. Corporals don't give a fuck about you. You're just a number to them. They take biometrics for palms now? What the fuck for, man? Yo, chat, check them out. It's Vince Vintage. Very cool. Very, very nice. Good video. Yep, they love your wallet. They don't love you. They want your money.